Monday edition, Mr. Relevant. Alex Strouf with you from the Everlight Solar Studio in downtown Madison, as always, alongside the great producer Tiny Hands, Hunter Vaughn, with me per usual. Big weekend, lots to get into around basketball, and the Milwaukee Bucks were so back, by the way, and I'm going to take a victory lap today. I don't do that often. Maybe I do. But I don't do it as often as maybe I think I do, so I'm going to do that at some point. Lots of people talking about court storming after Kyle Filipowski of Duke was injured Saturday after a loss at Wake Forest. So we'll get into that and the debate around that as well. And Rob Domofsky, our buddy, friend of the show, and obviously does a great job covering the Packers for ESPN, wrote an article that came out this morning looking at the Packers free agents and which ones should and should not be looked at as guys that should be back in 2024. So I have 7 names. I want to talk about all 7 of those names at some point today as well, as we get into the depth of the offseason. Over the course of the next few weeks, free agency will kick up. We're only about 2 weeks away from the legal tampering period. March 14th, the official start of free agency. And that's what makes the NFL so damn fun. Right, like we talk in show meetings before the show, or other shows I'm a part of here at ESPN Wisconsin, and we're like, this is the dry period, this is the toughest. When in reality, like, the NFL is king, man. There is no downtime. The NFL Combine gets underway this week. Had a really fun conversation, if you missed it, Friday with 3-time Super Bowl champion James White, and around the Combine and the importance of it, or the lack thereof, really, as 12 of the 32 NFL head coaches will not be attending the NFL Combine in Indianapolis this week. I thought that was really interesting. And James White, who went through this 10 years ago, talked about how he kind of always thought the Combine was overblown, and maybe coaches are coming to that realization now in 2024. So if you missed that conversation, you can find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts in the Mr. Relevant podcast feed. But let's start with the Bucks. A couple of nice wins for them out of the All-Star break over the course of this weekend, starting with Friday at the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then just a drubbing yesterday of the Joel Embiid-less Philadelphia 76ers in Philly. Back-to-back good wins, good offensive performances, good defensive performances. They hold Minnesota 107. They hold Philly under 100 points. I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything is fixed. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this team is all of a sudden they are the favorite to win the East. But I will tell you that, boy, was I right. Boy, did I tell you to calm down. Last week I asked Tiny Hands, scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you about the Milwaukee Bucks? Tiny Hands, your response was?
I was at about an 8.5. Yeah. Because they hadn't shown any consistency.
So I will ask you the same question momentarily. But I told you I was at a 3. I said there's still too much season left. They're in the middle of a coaching change. Their 3rd head coach of the season, right? If you count Joe Prunty, the interim head coach. Good things take time. And the thing that I always worried about with the Bucks was, are they going to run out of time? And ultimately, I don't think that will be the case, because I think when you have 2 of the best players ever in Dame Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, you just naturally are going to have to figure it out. And it's going to, like, I still think there will be low points over the course of the second half of this regular season. But I did tell you last week, and we have the video evidence, that I believed the Bucks would come out of the All-Star break winning 5 in a row. And I know it's only been 2, but I'm telling you, Aaron Rodgers style, relax. Here's what I said last week. But this is a team that's going to rattle off a nice winning streak out of the All-Star break. I don't think they'll lose again until March 4th. Book it. Mark it. You heard it here first. March 4th is when they play the LA Clippers. They still have a back-to-back home-and-home with the Hornets starting tomorrow at Fiserv Forum. Then Thursday, they go to Charlotte. And then another nationally televised game coming up on Friday night as they head to Chicago to take on the Bulls. I think they win all 3 of those games. Then they play the Clippers and the Warriors and the Lakers and the Clippers again, and then the Kings, the Sixers, the Suns, the Celtics. Their next, 8 after that, which might get a little dicey. But I think establish that you're here, which they did Friday. I mean, that was a really nice win in a tough game that went down to the wire, and Damian Lillard does what he does in the fourth quarter. It was an impressive win on Friday night at the Timberwolves. Then yesterday, and again, it needs to be noted that the Sixers are without their best player and the reigning league MVP in Joel Embiid, but he is they are still a solid team, right? They still have all-star presence, but the Bucks looked like they were on another level yesterday, which is good. right? I mean, that's exactly what you are anticipating and hoping for, and hoping that this team can turn it around, because it's very clear, right? You don't fire Mike Budenholzer, you don't fire Adrian Griffin midseason unless you have championship or bust expectations, which the Bucks rightfully have. When you make an acquisition and a move for a guy like Damian Lillard in the offseason, you're clearly going for championships, and anything short of that is a failure. And I'm happy that is the expectation, because if you think back to when I started getting into the NBA, like 2008, shoot, there was no expectations like this for the Milwaukee Bucks. If they got in the playoffs as an 8 seed, it was a win, and that was the expectation for 6 or 7 years in a row, right? I'm talking like end of Michael Redd era. Who else was in there? Like the Ersan Ilyasova, Brandon Jennings.
He was
teams.
my guy.
Ersan was? Yeah, they just did. Where did I just see this? Kyle Preston Nortman, weekdays 2 to 5 on ESPN Wisconsin. They do a game on Thursdays called Over Under, where they're given a top 10 list, and their top 10 list was most 3-pointers made by the by individual Milwaukee Bucks players during their time with the team. Ersan was like number 4 on that list.
Love it.
It's a tough list. Giannis, I think, was number 6. And it's not like he's a guy known for making threes, but he's been around long enough where he's just high on that list. Obviously, Chris Middleton, Ray Allen are the big names on that list. But, Giannis comes in at number 6.
So, since you were correct on this, and they have started to play well.
So far I have been. They could lose to Charlotte tomorrow, and this could all come crumbling down, which, again, I mean, that'd be on brand for what they were doing in the first half of the season.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because you've liked to say that you're an NBA guy.
Yeah, I'm an NBA guy, yeah.
No, you're not.
I'm an NBA guy.
Okay. If you're such an NBA guy, give me just a couple of seconds here.
Yeah.
Because we've gone to this website before.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to it, so I'm just pulling it up. You've got a monitor in front of you.
I do.
I want you, and there we go. In front of you now.
Yeah.
You can rank or tier all 30 NBA teams.
All 30? And I'm going to do this rapid fire?
Yeah. S tier obviously being like they can win a championship. Okay. They're championship level. D tier is they're looking to tank.
Okay, I think I can manage that. I might struggle with a few of these, admittedly.
But if you're an NBA guy, you shouldn't struggle. I'm an NBA
guy. Well, fake it till you make it, Hunter. All right, we'll start Philly in the B tier, just because with Joel, they're championship contenders probably. Although I never trust Philly in the postseason, but without Joel right now, they're just a safe B. Washington stinks. Sorry, Johnny Davis, you're in the D tier. Atlanta's an interesting one, because their record indicates they're bad. I still have faith in Trae Young. I'll put them in the C tier, but I'm going to put teams in front of them in the C tier. They're going to be a low C tier type team. Who's next? Cleveland Cavaliers, the 2 seed currently in the Eastern Conference. I don't know that they're a real championship contender, but I like some of the pieces they have. I'm going to put them high B tier.
What pieces do they have?
Darius Garland.
And
Donovan Mitchell.
And
Jared Allen's still there, I think.
Okay.
How am I doing? So far, so
I'll
good?
give it to you with having 3.
Colin Sexton's gone, which I thought he was going to be a better NBA player than he was, but he flamed out in Cleveland, so that's too bad. I named 3 players. Don't test me. Detroit stinks. D tier. Indiana's an A tier. I fully believe in Tyrese Halliburton. That might just be bias. Milwaukee A tier as well. I just, as I've told you for the last week and a half, I think they get back on track. Toronto's really bad this year, and if you just did the exercise you did with me on the Toronto Raptors, I would fail. Scotty Barnes, that's all I got.
That's all they have.
Okay, good. Glad we're on the same page. I will put them low C tier next to the Atlanta Hawks there. Who's next? The Dallas Mavericks, fun one. I like them, but they're in the play-in right now as it stands. But you have a generational superstar. I will put them in the B tier. I like Dallas. I think they could make a run. Do they make it in to the playoffs? Now, again, in the Western Conference shaking out, seeds 5 through 10 are all separated by 5 games only. So we'll see how that actually ends up shaking out. Denver is going to be our first addition to the S tier. I watched them totally manhandle the Warriors over the weekend, and Jokic just completely outplaying Draymond Green. Jokic is the best player in the world. Denver's the reigning champion. They get the S tier and likely will be the only team I put in there. Maybe Boston as well. We'll get in there once we get to them. Here's the thing with the Memphis Grizzlies, Hunter. No team in basketball is more injured than them. I watched them beat the Milwaukee Bucks, what was that now, 2 weeks ago? And I legitimately couldn't name a player on the court at one point for them. I didn't know who any of the 5 guys on the floor in the fourth quarter were for them at one point. And it was an unbelievable moment where I'm just like, wow, maybe I'm not an NBA guy, but also they're just that beat up.
I don't think true NBA guys could name or would actually know who anybody on the floor was that night.
Okay, fair.
They're in a rough spot.
Yeah, they are, but I don't want to hold injuries against them despite them in 12th place, 13th place in the Western Conference. I'm going to put them, they're going in the D tier. Sorry, Memphis. Minnesota goes in the A tier. That's a really fun team. Top seed in the Western Conference. They're a young team. Now what we need to see is if they can actually make a run in the postseason. But they're a fun team. I'm in on them. The Spurs stink again, despite having Wemby, so they go in the D tier. They're in last place in the Western Conference. We just are rattling off a bunch of really fun ones in a row. Utah stinks. They go in the D tier. Hey, here's a fun one. Clippers. How much do you buy in to Kawhi and James Harden and Paul George and Russell Westbrook coming off of the bench? Hunter, are you aware who my favorite player in the NBA is?
No.
I just named him. Russell Westbrook is my all-time favorite NBA player. All-time favorite. So I'm biased when it comes to him, but I don't know if they're real championship contenders. I'm going to put them high B tier, despite having the 4th best record in the Western Conference. We'll see what happens with them. Phoenix, again, just kind of, I'm going to put them low B tier just because they're in the play-in as it stands right now, or just outside, I should say. They're tied for 6th place, so they're actually technically not in the play-in, but if the Mavericks win a game, they fall back into it. They go low B tier. Okay, how many we got left here? Quite a bit. 15 left. Portland, D tier. Let's just rattle these off. Sacramento Kings, they're better than low B tier. Low B tier. Can you see that, or is it getting cut off?
I'd put them first whenever you put them in there.
Okay, got it. I can manage that. Who else am I missing here? Who's next? Knicks? Oh, boy. Do I actually buy the hype?
They've been slowly getting better.
I know. I like Jalen Brunson. How's that for analysis? I like Jalen Brunson.
Cool.
I'll put them in the B tier. New Orleans, again, this is another wacky one, right? Like, they're probably better than a 7 seed, but also the West is just hard to comprehend. I feel like I'm copping out by putting everybody in the B tier, but that's what we're going to do here with New Orleans. Charlotte stinks. They go D tier. Houston stinks. They go D tier. Miami, Hunter, the Miami Heat. They're not as good as they were a year ago, but let's remember they made the finals as an 8 seed a year ago. They're currently the 7th seed in the East. Playoff Jimmy's a different breed.
They also have probably the best coach in the NBA.
You would put Spoelstra over Kerr?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Spoelstra has done more with less. I mean, obviously he had the LeBron years, but even without that, he's been incredible.
I'll allow it. I'll put them in the B tier. Bulls stink, D tier. The Nets are kind of a dumpster fire yet again. They go D tier. How about my second favorite team, the Oklahoma City Thunder? I'm in on them. Throw them in the A tier. Same thing with the Wolves, though, right? Like, young team, overplaying how good they actually are. Can they make a run? I hope so. I'm actually going to move them to the B tier, though. I just don't think they're as good as the Wolves, the Pacers, who, by the way, are the 6th seed in the East, and I have them in the A tier. NBA guy. I think I'm just biased because they have the Bucks number. Would they go 5-1 this year in their series against them? All right, last 4. Warriors. I have a hard time putting them in the B tier, but I'm going to just because, again, they're bad. Like, I think they're under 500 or close to it on the season. I think they're the 10 seed as it stands right now. They're in the play-in, but maybe they'll come around. I'll put them B tier just because they're them. Celtics I'll put up in the S tier. I think they're that good in the Eastern Conference. They're the best team in the Eastern Conference, and I don't think it's necessarily close right now. 7.5 game lead. The Bucks, they could knock them off in the playoffs, but regular season Celtics, too good as it stands right now. Okay, last 2. Lakers in the Orlando Magic. LeBron James, B tier. And I'll throw the Magic in the C tier. Nice improvement this year. They're in the playoffs as it stands right now. There you go, Hunter. How'd I do?
You did pretty well. I mean, I think you just looked at the standings. So you're basically, Matt Hamilton looking at the box score.
Yeah, I mean, it was necessary because I need to separate the D's and the C's. I have a gut feeling that a lot of these teams are middle of the pack, thus why the B tier is so packed, and then all the bad teams are just bad. But yeah, I mean, outside of a couple of gut checks, like the Pacers is an A team, I think I did okay. I did better than you in terms of spelling. Strouf. Is Strouf an NBA guy?
Oh. Whoops.
Rendezvous. Rendezvous. That's how you spell rendezvous.
I've never claimed to be able to spell, and for throwing this together very quickly, I didn't realize.
Yeah, that's okay.
It doesn't help that your name always shows up as being spelt wrong. Like the computer just doesn't figure it out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I blame the computer. It's not my fault. I'm going to be Jesse Nelson. I'm never going to take responsibility for anything.
It's not your fault. Don't worry about it. Not your fault. All right, there you go. I cheered the NBA. I'm an NBA guy. That's my take on that. But I think the Bucks are back. We will find out when we chat again Wednesday as they host the Charlotte Hornets tomorrow. That should be a win. That should make it 3 in a row of the 5 I said they would win out of the All-Star break. We will see what happens with them. But don't panic. Hunter, what's your panic meter at?
It's lessened now.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm
a 6 or a 7. Like I'm right
so
in
it's
there.
Still high.
Yeah, but it has lessened. I like what I saw from them in these 2 games, but it's, again, they need to string it together. Don't fall down to lesser opponents, which has been their tendency this year.
Yep.
They've been playing to whoever it is they're playing instead of just being like, no, like, we're good. We're better than you. We're just going to go beat the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. They don't always do that. And until they do that, because that's what Boston is able to do, that's what Denver does, they need to do that consistently.
Yeah, you're right on that. I totally agree with you on that. All right, the other hot topic coming up here today is after Saturday's Wake Forest-Duke game that was at Wake Forest, the Demon Deacon faithful stormed the court, and we saw this a couple weeks ago with Caitlin Clark in Iowa when they lost on the road. Athletes running into fans. Kyle Filipowski injured for Duke. And it brings up the discussion, should we ban court storming? And to be real honest with you, I'm usually a curmudgeon on this topic. Like, I'm usually the old man who says, should we really be storming the court when the number 15 team in the country loses on the road? I usually bring it up when the Badgers are ranked and they lose on the road, and they did a couple of times over the course of that 4-game losing streak a few weeks back. And I just felt like, I don't know if that's a worthwhile court storm. Like, if you're going to storm the court, it should be for a team that's worthy. And a team that's lost 4 in a row probably isn't worthy. For Duke, I understand they are the gold standard of a basketball school, and it's exciting for Wake Forest, who's kind of been up and down the last few years, to beat a team like Duke. But when situations like this arise, and obviously when a player is injured, it's going to bring up a lot of people's emotions and their take on the situation. However, I saw one so ridiculous that made me feel like the least curmudgeon-y guy of all time. And I love this guy. He's like one of my ideal guests this time of year on this program, which we are working on. I love Jay Billis. I think he is terrific when it comes to all things college hoops. Except this. Jay Billis was on First Take today. This was his opinion on court storming and maybe how we prevent player injuries going forward. Go ahead, Jay.
It's not a good idea to try to stop the court storming. That could cause more problems than it would solve. But you don't have to stop the court storming. One time, all you have to do is once they're on the court, don't let them off. Just say you're all detained and give them all citations or arrest them if you want to. And then court stormings will stop the next day.
Just arrest them. Just grab every pair of handcuffs you have in Wake Forest on campus and throw everybody in cuffs. And you'll never see a court storming again. Like, that is insane. That's asinine. Hey, Jay, go to a college campus. Give every kid on the college campus that's participating in drinking underage. And I bet underage drinking will stop. Right? Like, that's the equivalent of the idea. You're not stopping the excitement of 19-year-olds on a college campus on a Saturday afternoon when you beat a top 15 team in the country. It's just not happening. So that was hilarious to me. Good comedic relief for a Monday morning. In reality, though, should there be better regulations and rules in place? There were students on the court before the game was over. That's an issue. Do they deserve to be arrested, though? No, I don't think so.
I get what he was like trying to go after. Like, it needs to be an extreme level of response for it. If your goal is to really end it, it has to be an extreme response.
Yeah, but that's not going to work.
Oh no, it's not. My big problem with all of this is the fact that, like, we've talked about it, I am a fan of Duke basketball.
Yep.
And I was annoyed that, of course, it had to be Duke's best player getting hurt from this. But if this happens to North Carolina, we're having the same conversation. This happens to, say, UCLA is a top 10 team or something. We're going to have the same conversation. But now, because it happened to Duke, not only are we going to have this conversation, but now as soon as it gets banned, they're going to always blame Duke basketball. Every college basketball fan is going to complain about it. But even if there's changes to it, it's going to be the Duke rule, and it's going to be people complaining about Duke and how, look. Yeah, and it's just, but.
So you're more concerned.
It's just annoying that of all of the teams, it had to be Duke.
Slow down. So you are more concerned that Duke, again, will be the topic of conversation, the team with a bullseye on them, if court storming rules are implemented, or trying to prevent
and it's going to be all the complaining about how Duke got this taken away.
Couldn't you make the argument that that's the best case scenario, right? If any team is going to be leading the charge on court storming, it should be the gold standard. It should be Duke and John Shire, who was crying in the post-game press conference.
No, because I just I like the years of Duke basketball when it's like, okay, yeah, they're good, but they're just kind of under the radar good. Like, that's just more enjoyable for me. The
Jay Billis take, though. I mean,
it's bad.
Oh, and it's getting the run it deserves today.
Good.
Everybody and their mama is tweeting that one. Can we hear from Jay one more time, Hunter? Do you mind? I just want to hear. I just need a laugh. It's Monday. I need the spirits to be high. Jay Billis on First Take once again.
It's not a good idea to try to stop the court storming. That could cause more problems than it would solve. But you don't have to stop the court storming. One time, all you have to do is, once they're on the court, don't let them off. Just say you're all detained and give them all citations or arrest them if you want to.
Yeah.
And then court stormings will stop the next day.
Just detain them. Say, hey, you're detained. You can't leave. There's only like 600 people here. I'm sure we have the police force for that.
I mean, Wake Forest didn't even have the security to assist with the court storming.
They didn't even have the security to stop them before the game ended. The court storming started before the game ended.
Well, and
how are they going to detain 600 people?
What was really weird, and I heard it on the TV broadcast, was the fact that you could hear someone behind the commentators talking about being prepared for the students to storm the court. And then they just couldn't handle it at all. You guys literally were talking about this with 3 minutes left in the game.
We have a poll in the field on Twitter at ESPN Madison, which you could vote on for the next 24 hours. Should court storming be banned? Right now, 69 votes on the poll, Hunter.
Nice.
71% of you say no, which means 29% of you are more curmudgeon-y than me. 29% of you say yes, court storming should be banned. HBISB chimes in with just hell no. And I'm with you. I don't think it should be banned. I just think there are better ways to do it. Funnel it properly. Make sure the visiting team is off the floor. You don't need the Caitlin Clark, Kyle Filipowski situations. You certainly don't need those anymore, right? Because that's bad for everybody. It's bad for Wake Forest. It's bad for Duke, obviously, as they lose one of their best players. Hopefully not long-term. Hope he's okay, but that was a scary situation. And you can't have kids on the floor with 0.7 seconds left in the game, right? And there wasn't going to be the game wasn't going to change. The results of the game wasn't going to change in those 0.7 second or 0.7 of a second, but you can't have that. Right, so I think about the Kohl Center, and I remember when they were hosting Purdue a couple weeks back, it was a couple nights prior, they had the security after the previous home game, running drills. They had a rope, and they were just in case upcoming this weekend, if there's a court storm, we need to prevent it. So they have ropes out, they're telling them where they need to be. They had the precautions in place in case Wisconsin was to win that game, so that the court would be stormed. We know that. but how would it be stormed properly and safely and all the in-betweens? And that's the important part. Wake Forest failed. Unfortunate for Kyle Filipowski, but life goes on. It's going to happen. It's college sports. Don't arrest them like Jay Billis suggested. That was so funny when I saw that, Hunter. I laughed so hard when I saw that for the first time, just because it's so outrageous, right? Just tell them you're all detained. Get the PA announcer involved. Not going to name schools, but we recently did a high school sports game where the PA announcer, after the game when we were still on our broadcast, was trying to clear out the gym. And I just picture that's the guy Jay Billis wants leading the charge, right? Because this guy was on the mic like, get out! You must leave the gym now! I imagine Jay Billis wants this guy on the mic going, you've all been detained! You are all under arrest for trespassing.
You know, I even saw another school have a court storm. I was watching the end of the girls' regional final between Madison Memorial and Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon students, Oregon wins on a last-second layup to win their regional final, and they had administrators out there, like, instantly to keep the students off the floor.
Yeah.
It was great. I'm like, high schools can handle this better than a university with $1 million budgets.
Yeah,
and,
that's fair.
fair. It's embarrassing for Wake Forest. And, again, I think Jay Billis was going for the you need an extreme measure in order to actually stop it, knowing that, like, this is absurd to suggest it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there was a level of seriousness out of it. I'm trying to defend.
I mean, he was serious. He was, and you could tell Shannon and Stephen A., if you're watching with us on the video side, they were, like, nodding their head, like, yeah, you tell him, Jay. I don't know if they went back at him because the clip I saw was just of Jay Billis, but anyway.
I don't think he was actually serious.
Oh, he was serious.
I think he was serious
no,
in
because
that.
he tweeted it. He tweeted it from his own account, and he's like, you need to do something drastic.
Yeah, see, it does. To end it, it needs to be drastic.
Yeah, he said court storming could be stopped as soon as tomorrow, but nothing is going to change. That's what he tweeted. So I think he's serious, which is the wild part about it. Real quick, this is how I know it's time to transition. On Twitter, at ESPN Madison, with the 91 votes now. Should court storming be banned? Still at 71 to 29%. No to yes. Hard Truths chimes in. Hard Truths. Hunter, I'm sure this is going to go nowhere fun. Everyone voting yes is a blue-haired woke lib who should stay indoors at all times. Grr.
Wow, you're so tough and cool, man.
Twitter is such a fun place sometimes. Anyway. All right, over at ESPN.com, Rob Demovsky, our buddy, broke down the Packers free agents and whether or not he anticipates they will be back. I just want to steal the idea and kind of walk through some of the same, because I've had more conversations over the course of the last week of, okay, like last week, Wednesday, we did some of the priorities that need to be addressed in the offseason for the Packers, which includes backfilling the safety position, upgrading the inside linebacker position, getting some interior offensive line depth, stuff like that, making some of the hard decisions like David Bakhtiari. Preston Smith might pop up. I think he'll be back, but he's a guy whose name has popped up either for a restructure or there's some freedom, I think, if you are to just outright cut him. And then there's a couple other guys where those situations pop up. So I want to run through 7 names and whether or not I think the Packers should bring these guys back, just because of situations around those position groups and maybe some of the positive areas in which they shine. I want to start with the guy who's on the screen. That's Keyshawn Nixon, the cornerback and kick returner. Let's keep in mind this guy was an All-Pro, right? Like, I know it wasn't his best season, especially on the defensive side, but he's still an All-Pro kick returner. He's still viewed as the best in the league when it comes to that position. So I think if you can limit his role defensively and truly make him a special teams guy, it's totally worth bringing him back. I would advocate for Keyshawn Nixon to be back. He's probably my number one. Absolutely, he should be back in this list of 7 names. The next name we've talked about quite a bit, that's running back A.J. Dillon. I think it's time to move on. I think, address that in the draft, even if it's day 3. And I was talking to my buddy Andy Herman last night, who does a great job with the Pack-A-Day podcast and covering all things Packers. He mentioned, I wouldn't be shocked if they go a 2017 route, which is when they drafted both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. And it's more of a, hey, don't really care which one hits. Just get some depth at that position and see what happens. Have two guys, Emmanuel Wilson and Aaron Jones, in camp and see who comes out on top, which I really do like that idea, given that the Packers right now have 11 picks in the upcoming NFL draft. So I would say no to A.J. Dillon, as sad as it is, because I don't know if I mentioned this, but last week, A.J. Dillon hanging out at the Wisconsin Badgers game. Right, like he's a cult hero. He's a fan favorite. He does such an awesome job in the communities up in the Green Bay area. He's such a great Packer, right? Like he's just a dude you like to root for. Unfortunately, it still is a business, and I think the correct business decision would be to move on from A.J. Dillon. John Runyon's a tough one, the right guard. He had a pretty up and down year. And it was cool to see, bear with me here while I explain this, it was cool to see how emotional he got in his end-of-year meeting with the media after the playoff loss to San Francisco. He's emotional, talking about whether or not he'll be back, because he doesn't know. It's not completely up to him, of course. But it's a guy that was drafted by Green Bay. It's a guy that's played, obviously, his entire career in Green Bay, the 4 years he's been here. He's fine. I think you can probably upgrade at right guard, but I would vote yes on John Runyon returning. Probably a short-term deal, probably a prove-it deal of sorts, but I think he's a guy that can improve, and a guy I do have faith in, and a guy I do really like on that offensive line. Now, you need some depth, right? And we know he was rotating with Sean Ryan toward the end of the year at right guard. Sean Ryan's still under contract. Could he be the starter next year? Yes, but John Runyon as a depth piece excites me. If he's not the starter, and if he is the starter, I think it's on a short-term deal. So I would say yes to John Runyon, bringing him back as a free agent. Couple of quick no's for you. I think the all-time, maybe not all-time, but recent memory Brian Gutekunst draft pick that I had the highest hopes for that completely fell flat, not named Amari Rodgers. Like we're going to call this the Amari Rodgers Award. Josiah DeGuara, the tight end. No chance he's back. Henry Pearson can play H-back and fullback, assuming he's back for the Packers next year. I am out on Josiah DeGuara. It's too bad. What could have been? Matt LaFleur loved Josiah DeGuara. A couple of injuries derailed him, and then he just never really was the guy. And obviously, they have two very good tight ends entering their second year in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft next year. So I'm out on Josiah DeGuara, unfortunately. He was like the ultimate, this guy could be something, and then he was really nothing guy.
It's so weird that the Packers have had multiple times of taking kind of mid-round tight ends, and then they just don't hit. And then all of a sudden they hit on two of them in the same draft.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's always fascinating to me when you see teams do that. Josiah DeGuara should be good. And I have a weird feeling he's going to go somewhere. Yeah, but he's going to go to Seattle.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, have a 600-yard receiving season. You're like, well, what the hell? That's what it's going to be like for Packers fans. Yeah.
Yeah, he could be one of those dudes, too. You're not wrong on that. Another note for me is safety Rudy Ford, unless you bring him back pretty much as exactly in a Keyshawn Nixon, special teams only role. He was a big special teams guy. But, I mean, the argument you could make with Rudy Ford is that safety position is horrible right now. I think you have two guys under contract, and Anthony Johnson Jr. and Benny Sapp. Those don't get you very excited, which is why I will say I think they should bring back Jonathan Owens, better known as Simone Biles' husband. I think he should be back in 2024.
I think they're going to bring back one of these safeties, but the problem is when you bring in a new defensive coordinator, they have different philosophies, different player types that they want, and I think the safety position is going to be the one where there's a lot of turnover.
I'm glad you say that because the last name on my list is Darnell Savage. And I'm really starting to come around to the idea that Darnell Savage should be back for the Packers in 2024.
It makes sense.
It's a combination of the lack of depth at that position, as I just alluded to. But it's also, I thought he was okay in 23. He was better than he was in 2022. He's still not great. He's still not a great safety in this league. But when you have Benny Sapp and Anthony Johnson Jr. under contract, if you can bring Darnell Savage back on a cheaper deal, which I don't know how possible that is, given the market for safeties, it feels like every team is kind of in the market for one. Unless you're getting Antoine Winfield, which, by the way, I don't think happens. I'd love to see it. I would love to see Brian Gutekunst take a huge swing at a position like that. But I don't think that will happen. I would vote bring back Savage and Owens just to give you some depth, and then maybe attack in the draft a little bit would be my one of two plans. That would be my 1B plan for the safety position. ideally, you take a swing in free agency, you attack it through the draft. But if you're not taking a big swing in free agency, I'd bring both those guys back, Jonathan Owens and Darnell Savage. And at least you feel semi-comfortable with those two guys back there, right? Like, I don't know how comfortable I am in a new system, especially if you're running like a nickel. And you have both safeties out there, obviously, in three corners. And the five guys on the field for you are then Darnell Savage, Jonathan Owens, Jair Alexander, Carrington Valentine, and maybe Eric Stokes or Keyshawn Nixon, depending on who you're playing. Like, I don't know that gets me super excited as your defensive backfield. So we'll see. We'll see. That's a position group, but I think we all know this at this point, right? It's the position group you have circled that you want them to attack. Last year it was wide receiver. This year it's safety. You went into last season knowing safety is weak. It was weak. It didn't kill you. It wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back, but it certainly didn't help the camel not break its back.
So I know you haven't gotten super into the draft quite yet. You're not a draft guy yet.
I'm not quite a draft guy. I'm focused on my NBA guys right now. Yeah.
Would you be okay with that position group in the secondary, but you take somebody out and you add Kool-Aid McKinstry, the DB? He's basically just a DB. He could play kind of anywhere from Alabama.
Yeah.
Are you feeling better about that group if he's out there?
I'm feeling better about that group just because of his name.
That is a great name.
If your name is Kool-Aid, I want you on my football team. I mean, it's as simple as that.
I don't know if that's a good way to run an NFL tean, but okay.
Well, there's a reason I don't run an NFL team, and there's a reason my presidential bid for the Packers has fallen short to this point.
Well, you've done one stump speech.
I would draft. I would draft Kool-Aid McKinstry. I would draft DeColdis Crawford. I would draft anybody with a great name. Like, Clinton Dix would have absolutely still been my first-round pick that year, right? Like, I'm all in on names. I'm a name guy. When we do high school coverage in the football season, I always make an all-area name team. I don't publish it, but I make it for myself because I just think funny names rock, and I'm all in on funny names. So that'd be my take on that. I have it somewhere. I just don't know where. My all names team list from this past season. I can't find it though. So anyway, that's my story. All right, a couple things left before we wrap up the show. We start with Hunter, who I walked into the office today. He goes, "I got a tiny hands take for you." So okay, all yours, man. So Hunter Vaughn, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I've got tiny hands, but I do have some big takes. And on Sunday, my wife and I went shopping. And because Easter stuff is out, I had to go and look at the Easter candy. I mean, I'm a big guy. I love my candy. I've decided that outside of Brock's, Jelly Belly, and Starburst, everybody else needs to get out of the Jelly Bean game. Like, I don't understand what Nerds is doing.
I didn't know they were in the Jelly Bean game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sitting there staring at it.
Skittles, too.
Yeah, Skittles has gotten into it.
I bet those are good, though.
It's no. Those are the only three you need. This is like MJ, Kobe, LeBron conversation. Like, those are the three.
I don't know that I agree with that from an NBA standpoint, but that's fine.
They are, but so like I don't need Nerds jelly beans. I don't need Sour Patch jelly beans.
Okay, so I
just stop it.
I'm okay with this take. I love the Starburst jelly beans. I'm all in on those.
They're the best.
I'm a big Starburst guy to begin with. I'm a fruit candy guy, right? Like I'm not a big chocolate guy. I'm a big fruit candy guy. I'm all in on Starburst and Skittles. So the fact that Skittles is making jelly beans is actually kind of intriguing to me. I would try those, and I would probably like those. I bet they're good. Sour Patch Kids jelly beans. Do they have the powder on them?
It looked like the powder was like mixed in with like the interior of the bean. I bet
those aren't bad either. So I understand your take. I think around Easter we should give more allowance to other. Because if you would have had this take 15 years ago, Hunter, that means the Starburst jelly beans would have never come around. And you just said they're the best. Because you probably would have just said Jelly Belly or bust at that point.
But in my lifetime, I've had the Starburst jelly beans. Like, they've been around that long.
They've been around for like 15 years.
Yes, and they hit right away from the start.
Yes, they did.
Nerds jelly beans have been around for a while.
I didn't know that.
And they haven't been hitting. Again, I'm a bigger guy than you. I know my candy, okay? So they've been around for a while. They just got to stop it. Like, we can just have the three, and I'm only keeping Brock's in there because they're like...
I don't even know what that is.
They're the one that like your grandma would always have,
sure.
And that they really don't taste that great, but they're just classic.
They're just normal jelly beans.
Yeah, they're
gotcha.
They're like the Bill Russell jelly bean. They're the old school jelly bean.
Sure, so that's
you're an NBA guy. You know the
So Starburst would be the Jordan.
Yes, Starburst is the Jordan.
Jelly Belly is LeBron.
Yep.
Okay. And what did you say, Brock's?
Yeah, Brock's is like the Bill Russell. Maybe the Kobe one, like it's in the conversation because it needs to be, but really it's not like the GOAT.
Sure.
So it's kind of a combo Kobe, Bill Russell.
I like it. I like that a lot. Huh. All right, I got to be honest, I didn't see this coming at all. I thought this was going to be sports related. I thought maybe this would be about the court storming stuff. Easter, when is Easter this year? Is it March or April?
I think it's like, I want to say it's like the first Sunday of April this year. I know like Palm Sunday is like the very end of March.
The very final day in March. It's
there
March
it is.
31st is Easter this year. Interesting. Well, we've got a month to try as many jelly beans as we can. Maybe that should become our thing.
There we go.
Maybe we should be a jelly bean program, and maybe this take will be dispelled because you're going to be all in on the Skittles jelly beans. I think you're going to like those the best. I've never had them. I didn't know they existed. I think you're going to be in on them.
I'm sure they taste fine.
They're going to be like the Starburst ones.
Yeah, but I just want my 3 jelly beans.
Okay.
That's all I want.
You're a jelly bean purist.
Yes.
I like that about you. All right. Time now for what Strouf Learned. You learn something new every day. I learned something new this weekend, as did you. And that would be this. I am before we went on the air, I was watching a video from the NCAA. I was watching the Division III men's basketball selection show.
Such a well done program.
It certainly was. I mean, it was good to watch. Now it ended while we were on the air, so I need to pull it up here. But I learned, and you and I share this. Like, we both love Division III athletics. We both went to WIAC schools. You're a grad of UW Oshkosh. I'm a
Hail
grad.
Titans.
I'm a grad of UW Stevens Point. It's a great day to be a Pointer, and I'm learning some of the names of these schools, and it is unbelievable.
What, like Ramapo?
Ramapo. Sure, that's a good example. But some of the names in Division III basketball are unbelievable. How about a first-round matchup between Widener and Roger Williams?
You made those up.
No, those are real.
That's incredible.
Widener is a top seed. They're hosting Roger Williams. And if they win that game, they will play the winner of Christopher Newport and Hobart.
Wow, Christopher Newport. Baseball powerhouse.
Give me a Christopher Newport, Roger Williams second-round matchup.
I love that.
I don't know who either of those people are. How about the Catholic School of America?
Well, I guess America needs a Catholic school.
They do, and they have one. They play Worcester State in the first round. What were some of the other names that stuck out to me? Some of them is just because I didn't even know how to say them, which excited me. Is it Gustavus Adolphus? I've called the hockey
Gustavus Adolphus. I swam against them. They're in the MEAC, I believe. Yeah. So that's with St. John's, formerly St. Thomas, who made the jump up to D1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know my D3 sports, man. And
then there were a couple I knew already, like Utica. They have a good hockey program. Calvin, Geneva, Randolph-Macon, Fontbonne, not sure how to say it. But
Fontbonne, probably.
You and I are going to get done with the show here in just a couple seconds. We're going to fill out a D3 bracket.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll print off 2 while I'm sitting here right now, and we will fill them out and have a little battle between ourselves. But I might just go, so you know people, when they fill out their March Madness bracket, they fill it out just based on like names or team colors, or they'll flip a coin. I'm going to make the name bracket, I think. I will do a little research and try to actually nail down who the best teams are. But I'm all in on Roger Williams and Christopher Newport in the second round.
The big thing, if I thinking back to my days at Oshkosh, given that Oshkosh had a very good team, went and called a national championship game. They broke my heart in that game, though.
They did win the national title in 2019, though, right?
Yeah, the year after I graduated.
Oh, nice.
Had back-to-back years of calling national championship losses.
Oh, nice.
That was a good time. Well, not heartbreaking at all. Not
clearly.
Emotionally traumatizing for me at all. But teams that can shoot the 3 well, go deep in the NCAA tournament for D3.
All right, that's something to keep an eye on. For any of you at home trying to fill out your Division III bracket with a bunch of nerds like Hunter and I. Can't wait. All right, that does it for us today. We'll do some more Bucks talk on Wednesday, diving deeper into hopefully what is a turnaround and 3 straight wins for them. Playing the Hornets tomorrow. We'll also catch up on a little college hoops. Badgers back in action on Tuesday. They do not rank once again in this week's AP poll. Marquette up to number 5 in the AP poll after a pair of wins last week. Marquette still viewed as one of those elite teams in the country as UConn falls to number 3 after a loss at Creighton last week. Houston won, and Purdue number 2 in this week's AP poll. We'll do some cleanup on that on Wednesday and Friday as well. Appreciate you hanging with us as always. Big thanks to Hunter Vaughn for keeping us on the air, making us look and sound good. A big thanks to you for chiming in, voting in the poll on Twitter. And speaking of polls on Twitter, the Mr. Irrelevant Badger Club Burger Bracket rolls on this week. We're getting down to the Savory 16 later in the week. We're going to be down to the final 16, which is where things really heat up. You got to stand tall for your favorite burger in the Madison area. And remember, go support local business, support local beer, have a burger, enjoy a Badger Club at any of the 63 locations involved in our burger bracket. 16 advance later this week, so looking forward to the reveal for that later in the week. But remember to keep voting along. We're going to post a couple more polls over the course of the next 48, 72 hours on Twitter at ESPN Madison. Whoever wins each poll advances to the round of 16, and that's where things heat up. Head-to-head matchups coming up later in the week as we crown the best burger in Madison. A big thanks to Lake Louie and Badger Club for their help and support of the show and this idea, which has been really fun to see the excitement around some of these bars and restaurants in the Madison area, joining forces. I saw this morning, because we just have one poll, right? You say there's 4 restaurants in each poll. Somebody went back and voted in every poll by replying and saying, write and vote for this place, write and vote for this place. I love it. I love the dedication. It doesn't give you an extra vote, but I like the dedication nonetheless. All right, we're back with you Wednesday. It's Mr. Relevant. I'm Alex Strouf. Peace.